Good morning and welcome to Tabletalk this February 14th, Valentine's Day. I am Kara Christopher, the Acting Director of Communications, here with Tabletalk today, and we have a wonderful topic ahead of us today, public access to the assistance grant. I know people have been talking about this for just a while and it's been on everybody's tongue. So we have all of the folks here that will give us the answers that we want to hear. So I want to invite my guests that's on my left to introduce themselves. And I'm so very excited to hear from them because I have some interesting questions. And I hope that the public will also call in and really get all your questions out. So I'll start with Permanent Secretary to my left.
Good morning. Thank you, Carrier, for having us. My name is Tasha Bertie. I'm the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Social Development, and we're happy to be here with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christopher. My name is Annie Malone Fratt, and I am the Chief Social Development Officer, Social Development.
Good morning. My name is Laurel Freeman. I'm the Program Director, Family, Children, and Support Services, Social Development Department.
Good morning, and my name is Altisha Daniel Dawson. I am a social worker, and I have the responsibility for the Public Assistance Program.
So good. So we have all of the key players that are here today, and we're very excited to have you here. And now talking about public access to the public assistance grant. That has been a topic on a lot of people's tongue these days. And if I can say so, I want to say that this has been as a recommendation from the COI. Previously, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, every minister or public government official had access from District 1 straight to 9 and all of the at-large representative. Today, it is no longer. It is in the hands of the Chief Social Development Officer. So let me start with you, Mrs. Malone Fred. How has that been for you in terms of managing that very big portfolio?
Okay, thank you for your question, Carrier. So the assistant grants that were previously managed under the House of Assembly came over to social development. It was in June of 2022. And when it came over, I believe we brought over like 356 persons who are already receiving grants through the House of Assembly. Mm-hmm. So they were added primarily to the persons that we were already providing grants to. In terms of management, in terms of the transition was a bit hectic because it meant that we had to necessarily call on all the hands that were in the department to be able to assist us with executing that. We have made several changes because when the grants came over, we were on the manual system where we were recording stuff manually. And we've gotten to that point now where we're doing a digital system, and that makes things much easier and supposedly shorten the time where persons necessarily doesn't have to wait for a protracted period of time before we can get any assistance. Not to mention the fact that it also has streamlined and assisted us greatly in terms of our reporting obligations to the ministry.
I'm glad that you talked about the reporting obligations. I'll just switch gears to the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Tasha Bertie. So of course we know that the recommendations were as a result of things that are needed to be improved, can I say. Mm-hmm. And so Mrs. Malone Fred talked about streamlining it and definitely having the checks and balances. In your capacity as the Permanent Secretary over this entire space, can you sit here and say for sure that you are comfortable with the checks and balances that are now in place, one, and that it is more effective and efficient for anyone who requires a grant now versus before?
I can certainly say that we're very comfortable with what we're seeing since the transition. I think we were comfortable before. Mm-hmm. What we've done is, in essence, provided the correct channel where those grants would be properly managed, ensuring that there's transparency and equity across the board. And that was one of the main rationales behind the transition of the assistance grant to that department. There are some additional changes that we would see coming down the road in terms of the way the system is administered. Currently, we're guided by the public assistance Act,
Okay.
which gives certain stipulations as to who can qualify. Of course, there are additional steps that we're working on within the ministry and with the support of the department as well to make amendments to those legislations, which again would sort of widen the space as to who can actually have or have access to the public assistance program.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask to confirm to me or to, because if Kara Christopher applied for an assistant grant versus Miss Lacey, who's on my right, we're asking for the same amount of money. I don't know. I'm gonna just throw something out there. I need 10. I know media, but this is government. I need $10,000 to assist in medical bills. I'm just saying so. What would be the difference between myself and Self X? Is it based on your salary? Is it based on your profile? Is it based on the need? Are these things made public? Anyone can answer that.
I'll defer to the technical people.
Okay.
It's based on a number of things, Ms. Area, because as you can appreciate, everybody's situation is different.
Right.
So based on the specific need, and you mentioned medical, there are certain documentation that you would have to submit along with your application. So based on what you are requesting, then documentation from the doctor, from NHI, individual documentation as well, because every application, there are specific documents that you have to submit with every single application, regardless of what service you're applying for. So for medical, you would require your NHI card. The legislation specify exactly who is qualified and eligible to apply for assistance. So that also has to be taken into consideration.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's legislation, I hope I can ask this question: who would be qualified if the legislation speaks to it? Well, who will not be qualified? Maybe you should ask that question. Who will not be qualified? I'm going to assume that you're meaning public officials, like politicians, are not qualified. I don't know. I'm just saying who are not qualified. Are you able to answer that question?
The legislation speaks specifically to who are qualified, right? So I would defer that person are free to check the legislation, because if we go into who are not qualified, I think we might be getting into a little wrangle, because there are situations where based on the situation, there are decisions that can be made, right? So I don't want to box us in to say, yes, the legislation says that, and we have to be specific to that, although we have to follow the legislation. But there are situations where exceptions can be made by certain individuals.
Okay. You sound like a lawyer, but I understand. I understand I need to be careful.
Kara, can I add to
Absolutely.
What Miss Freeman would have said?
Yes.
Because it is that very same Public Assistance Act of 2013. It has some limitations in it. And part of the restructuring of the public assistance program necessarily is forcing us to look at what those limitations are.
Okay.
And we will be looking at them through making some revisions to the current legislation as is.
Okay.
And those revisions will come in the form of it's not a policy, it's
Well, we were doing amendments to the current act, and with the hopes that we're actually doing regulations for the current act.
Understood. So we're a very small community. Everybody knows who everybody is. We were just laughing and joking just here before. And I was mentioning to some of my coworkers yesterday that I was doing this show. And I said, some of the challenges that I think that people would have is actually applying for the grant. And one of my coworkers said, you know what, if I need the money or I need assistance, I don't care, I will. Now, she's one of the 1%. There are 99% would need the money but will be afraid for a numerous amount of reasons. They don't want their business there in the government. They don't want their information leaked on a public domain, which has happened before. What guarantee do you have that persons who apply for grants, their information will be kept confidential and there will be an objective approach to ensuring that the grant or the amount of money in the grant is not because of who you are or who you're for or who you're aligned to?
Sure.
So that's a very good question. Actually, with the new redesign of the program, what it has allowed us to do is now present our cases to a committee. We have a committee that makes decisions on the applications. And when it's presented to them, you're presenting a unique ID that is formulated by our new database system. So basically, the persons within that space, they do not know the individual. What they do have is a summary of what the situation is as it pertains to that individual. Prior to that, of course, they would have known the names of the applicants. And one of the things I think I can confidently say is that we knew the importance of confidentiality, including the staff as well as the persons that sit on that committee. And we try to keep people business right in that space. As it pertains to my colleagues, when you come into the department, you get to see a social worker in a private space. You get to have a discussion with your social worker in a private space. We're encouraged to keep stuff confidential all through as you walk through that door and all through the department.
I think it's important, and I want to echo that sentiment. I think we as a community have this perception, I suppose, that because you're coming to apply, then your business is public.
Right.
You know, and it's not necessarily what would have actually been happening even before the system was designed the way it is.
Okay.
At the end of the day, a social worker has the opportunity to go through training, which of course confidentiality is a main element of that training.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can echo it from Annie, and I'm sure she would support me on this. The team at the department have been well trained and have been executing this role. We have persons here who've been employed as social workers for more than 10 years. And I'm certain that they've kept that reputation for themselves because it's important that they maintain the standards of the positions that they hold. So hopefully that also lends to the support that the persons in the community understand. At the end of the day, you have a cadre of professionals who understand the importance of their role, and the systems that we've been creating would just be expanding on the current systems that were already in existence.
I don't know if you ladies, and I want to point out it's all power ladies on this table, but I don't know if you ladies get the accolades that you deserve all the time. But based on what I know in terms of the transition, this is a lot of work. So I just want to say congratulations in even handling that space and keeping it flowing, because we haven't heard anything negative coming out of that. I think what we're hearing is people don't know, hence
Right,
you're
right,
here.
exactly.
So if
Exactly.
we were to apply, if I'm going to use myself every single time just because we want to just make sure we keep it like that.
The only thing is, I would say sometimes you probably wouldn't be the ideal
Oh dear.
demographic that we be catering
I
to.
don't understand what that means, but okay. Okay. Jane Doe applies for a license for grants,
Right.
and she is in some serious positions in terms of, her housing is not good. She's in a domestic situation that's not the best. How does Jane Doe, who may not have the most education, may not know exactly how to go about it, how does Jane Doe go about applying for a grant? Can you walk us through that process?
So basically, the department, we have a couple locations.
Wow.
So we're at the Botanic Station, so persons can visit that office, as well as the Johns Hall location, which is the main office, and they can make an application through that way by visiting the office. We also have telephone numbers. If you wish, I can share those now, and persons can call to make an appointment, and they will come in to see the intake officer. So I know, I forget. As well as our Virgin Gorda office. I didn't forget, but yes. So we have a couple offices that persons can visit. Our main numbers are 468-3636 or 468-3650. Okay?
We'll get those up on the screen at some point.
Yes.
To make sure. But the fact that you talked about 3 different locations, I had no idea. I literally thought it was just one location. So Johns Hole, Botanic Station. I only knew about Botanic Station.
Yes.
And
our Virgin Gorda
Virgin Gorda office.
Yes.
So persons who are in need. So there is no online version of the application yet, correct? As yet.
Yeah.
As yet, but
But
that's
persons can access the application online, they can call the office or they can send an email to socialdevelopment@gov.vg and an application will be sent to them. But before we move on, before Mrs. Dawson finish, I just want to say a bit about the confidentiality bit
Sure.
about it, because I know it's a very ticklish issue in our small community or 24, square box.
Yeah.
And persons have a real concern about that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do at the department, you can call a social worker directly. You can call Mrs. Fred, you can call myself or Mrs. Dawson and explain to us exactly what your situation is. And we can arrange for you to come into the department and see us directly, because all three of us are trained in exactly how to enter the applications in Kobo, to do the assessment, the service form, the validation. So you won't necessarily have to see anyone else in the office.
Okay.
You can come directly to any one of us.
So I want to piggyback on something that the permanent secretary said. She said somebody like me wouldn't be the normal target audience. So I want to go back to what does that mean. So I ask about who will be eligible. Forgetting me, but I know you mean
Yeah.
all of this.
Not a single
Yes, yeah, that's fine. I understand. I get your point. But I know that a lot of times that people suffer in silence, and you're looking at somebody and you're seeing what we want you to see,
Right.
and but behind the
Point.
scenes there's a whole lot of stuff going on. What information can you put out there to persons that look like me, that may want to have someone to either talk to in terms of assisting, or maybe somebody they know in their family? How can they come to you without feeling like, well, I work in at, I don't know, I'm going to just say a trust company, so they might say I'm not the typical demographics. Can you address that, Mrs. Malone Fred?
I think that's a very good question, Ms. Christopher, because I think I heard Ms. Botti when she said that, and I think one of the things that we have to do is to look at context also,
Right.
because you may be the DC, but we don't know what your expenses are,
Right.
or some situation could befall you that prompts you to want to seek assistance. And from that standpoint, because I know Ms. Streamer is very hesitant about what the criteria are, but I think the legislation is pretty specific. And even if I say what I'm going to say, please, public, understand that it is a piece of legislation that is currently under review.
Under review. I think
Because
need to say,
yes, we recognize the shortcomings
Yes.
of the legislation, and we are speedily taking actions to remedy that. So the qualifying criteria are primarily four. You have to be a belonger, you have to be a resident, you could be married to a belonger, or taking care of someone who is a belonger within the territory. So those are your four qualifying criteria to first be able to apply for assistance.
I want to say, I'm not sure why Ms. Freeman was hesitant to say that, because it sounds okay to me, but I'm going to leave that to the PS and those who do the overhauling
At
later
the end
on.
of the day, we recognize that the current legislation, as they are, really exempts a major cadre of a group of
working
persons, the
population.
demographics of our territory right now.
I understand what you're going to say.
And again,
yes.
if we're trying to be look at it from a holistic point of view, we recognize that that's one of the things that needs to change. At the end of the day, an individual who's living in the Virgin Islands, if they're having an issue, they become now a burden on the territory.
Right.
And this is one mechanism through which we can support them. But as it is, the current legislation does not allow us to do that.
I understand.
Yeah.
If this
Ms.
was...
Carey, I
Yes,
have
ma'am.
to interrupt, but
Sure.
just to add to what Mrs. Fred said and Ms. Botti about demographics, I think one of the elephants in the room is that all of us at this table, we purchase groceries at the same stores that someone who perhaps is working minimum wage, they purchase the same groceries that we do.
Yes.
And as Mrs. Fred said, we only can see the output of parents, of persons. We have had applications from all demographics within the community, all demographics. And we try as best as possible to treat them with the most respect and dignity when they come to the office, because we know we are a very prideful community.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot for someone to walk through our doors and say that they need help. So at that point, we try not to further make them feel, dehumanize them, right? And we do the best that we can to put forward the application. And Mrs. Dawson mentioned the anonymity, but the applications are only recognized by your NHI number.
Oh, okay.
Right. So nobody would know exactly who the person is. So that's how we apply. If you don't have an NHI, we use your social security. If you don't have a social security, we use your passport. If you don't have a passport, we use your birth certificate or your driver's
So
license.
anybody could.
Yes, yes.
And even know options that are available in the current new system that
New
we've
system.
implemented since.
So the PS
since,
made sure she reminds me I'm not on
Please.
Real Talk, so I can't ask a question that will not qualify for this table. So I'm not going to ask that question. But prior to the COI recommendations, it was said, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, that you were able to go to your local representative and get monies for what the representative considered to be a need, whether bills, health, school, etc. What is the difference now between a resident of the Virgin Islands going to a representative to ask for monies in whatever category versus right now with the transition to this new system? Are there specific categories? What type of grants are now available?
So basically, our grants are consist of you can have a monthly food grant, and that will be issued via a voucher. Individuals could also qualify for a monthly financial grant, and that's basically a cash grant, so they get a check or direct deposit to their account. We also offer medical, as indicated earlier, as well as we assist persons with rent and childcare, meaning daycare or preschool fees. Those are the fees that we would assist with. We also assist with utilities. So we may pay a outstanding water bill or outstanding electricity bill.
Basic utility.
Basic utilities.
So not internet. That's
It's a basic.
That's basic. I was going to say that's
because
kind of
we've
basic.
now transitioned
Yeah.
to a lot of online learning. So
Exactly.
So you
basic
ladies are very much
utilities.
opening my eyes, cause on my side, hey, young you this, they could literally pay for everything. So if I hear you, if somebody requires payment for daycare, I'm putting a scenario out there. Does the check go directly to the daycare, or the check goes to that person and hope that they pay the daycare? What is the accountability there? What's the check and balance there?
So basically with a daycare, in your example, the payment will go directly to the provider.
It will go directly to the provider.
The same with rental assistance. It goes directly to the
Okay,
landlord.
well, that's good.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask a question now. Is there a cutoff point? Mary Jane, because I'm not going to say Carrie Christopher anymore, has 5 children and she requires assistance for food. Is there a check-off point or stop point if Mary Jane gets 6, 7, 8 children, or we just continue to give Mary Jane funds up to 20 children? Nobody want to ask a question?
I'll answer, Carrie. So the situation is one basically where I think you would have to look at the children,
Okay.
whether or not they're 20 or they're 2.
Okay.
You would have to look at the needs of the children and basically, make a decision that is within the best interest of their family. So if you have 20, all of us around this table may say, that's being pretty irresponsible.
Right.
But we're not judge or jurors.
Right.
We're there to provide assistance. We're there to provide a service. And I think one of the things I want to underscore is the fact that the public assistance is really a basic need grant. It covers whatever basic needs you may want. And we all know those basic needs, basically, if we were to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, would be food, clothing, shelter, and that stuff. So those are your basic. But but that is not to say they're not outliers that we would have to take into consideration at times, because all of us, any of us, are 1 foot away, are one step away from going over that crack.
Yeah.
And the issue is that you want to be able to prevent that, because government social services are supposed to be in a position to mitigate people from falling through the cracks.
Exactly. And I want to piggyback off of what Mrs. Malone-Fred said. At the end of the day, the department has a mandate looking at the holistic approaches to the needs of the community. And when you're talking about, just using the example of Miss Doe, as you would say, and Jane Doe, and the fact that she may have had so many children.
Right.
You know, while the department will be trying to address the needs of the immediate needs of the family, they also provide additional support in other ways.
Right.
So the counseling means that might very well be available to that individual as a person who you see that they might need additional support, support in getting employment, supporting understanding, you know, how are you living to support and benefit the children that you're creating. You know, so the department is holistic again. It's not just about the immediate needs of those individuals, but as well as looking at the immediate needs of that particular individual who is targeting the department for support.
Very much. I understand that very much.
And I'm glad Ms. Borty mentioned that, because it's not where we're just giving out service, right? You need rent or medical, and we provide that. We also create a treatment plan for you so that we try to make your situation better when you leave the department than when you came into the department. So if you're having issues budgeting, we would organize a seminar for you to attend. If you, of course, these children have a father, I'm hoping, Miss Christopher. So one of the things that we do and strongly encourage is family.
Okay.
So the father would have to do his part. So we encourage the mom to seek maintenance. And if she's hesitant to do that, the department has a mandate. We can file the application on our own for maintenance. Yes, so we provide if the children need tutoring. So as Mrs. Barty said, it's a whole wraparound support services that we provide to the individual and not just look at their immediate need, because we want them to be in a better position when they come to us, when they leave than when they come. We want them to be able to say, yes, I went to social development because I was in short-term need for financial assistance or food, but by the time I leave, I'm now able to budget my monies better. I have a better job. Perhaps I have attained my high school diploma, training, etc. So we look at the
Parenting.
individual holistically.
So you said something that was what I wanted to ask. You said short-term needs. So that makes me to ask the next question. Is there a ceiling where Miss Jane Doe, who don't have no father, just so you know, no baby daddy involved in here because she has 8 children. But is there a ceiling where Miss Jane Doe or John Doe, because we're going to assume that it's women and men, can come to get these grants? We'll say, okay, well, we've looked at your account and we've provided these services, whether resume building, budgeting, etc., for the last 4 years, and there needs to be a weaning off of the services. Is that a situation, is that a transition period with the recipient and social development?
Yes, there is. Once we review the treatment plan for that individual, after a while, as Ms. Freeman say, if they're in a better position, we will look at how best to wean them off of the system. So sometimes our grants may begin on a short-term basis, which will be like, you probably get it for 3 months in the first instance, but it's under review. It's always under review.
Okay.
So if at that point we realize that they need more assistance, then we will, go back to the committee, and the committee might give an additional 3 months. So that case is always under review. We're not going to just drop them like that. We make sure that we work with them to help them to be in a better position.
So this committee, that we're not going to ask who's on the committee because you probably won't tell me, but this committee is able to review these cases. I'm looking at the production team because I know that we have to take a break in a minute, So we're gonna take a break in. I don't want to say 2 minutes and 2 seconds, but we're gonna take a break, and we'll be back shortly after we give these ladies a chance to drink some water. But I want to encourage folks, if you're listening, whether on ZBVI and CBN Radio, we're here. We're also live on CCT Live and Flow TV, so we're everywhere. To call in, I'll give you the access number in a little bit, but we will be back in just a minute as we continue our conversations with these very prolific ladies on access to public assistance grants for the government of the Virgin Islands. We'll be right back.
Itlulapap mo naman. Itlapalapap.
Myth: special education teachers are only at the Eslin Henley Riche Learning Center, so support is lacking in all schools. In fact, there are trained special education teachers at all primary and secondary public institutions, as well as a number of supporting staff. As of 2023, there are 17 special education teachers within the education sector. More trained special educators are needed to meet this diverse population. No limitations, no boundaries. This special education fact was brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth Affairs, and Sports.
Are you interested in a career in human resources? If so, the Department of Human Resources is the place for you. With opportunities for growth and development, you'll thrive here. Here's Cara, a proud member of the Department of Human Resources.
Hello, my name is Cara Christopher, and I am a Human Resources Manager at the Department of Human Resources. I began my journey at this department as an Assistant Human Resources Manager about 5 years ago. I was eventually promoted to my current role, Human Resources Manager, responsible for organizational development and workforce planning. I love working at the Department of Human Resources because I get to work with a dynamic team of success-driven individuals who enjoy and are excited about the work that they do. There are also so many opportunities for growth within the department and the field of human resources. Not to mention that you can learn so much about the public service and get to be a part of public service transformation. So join our team today. Submit the employment application form available at bvi.gov.vg, supporting documents, your CV and cover letter to hrdbvi@gov.vg to apply.
So, what are you waiting for? Apply today. We can't wait to have you.
Welcome back to Table Talk, Government Business at its Best. I am your host, Kara Christopher, here with these fantastic ladies representing the social services of the government of the Virgin Islands. Now, Mrs. Malone Fret, somewhere during that conversation, we talked about what it felt like an endless list of things that people can get. I almost want to ask you, can I get my nails and hair done? Because it was everything. I heard everything. What is not covered under the social assistance grants?
Thank you so much for that question, Ms. Christopher. So, as I said earlier, it's a basic needs grant, and we highlighted what those basic needs are. So, to avoid any level of confusion among persons and so that people don't get frustrated in the process of you say I can apply and I apply, these are some of the things that the program will not cover. It will not cover infrastructural works, which is if you need a road to your home, it will not cover that. It will not cover retaining walls. It will not cover electrical connections. It will not cover tuition sponsorship, relocation costs, credit cards, commercial, anything for commercial business. It will not cover rental for retail businesses, cosmetic surgery, and school leave mortgages. Yes. So those are the areas that cannot be covered under the public assistance grant at this time. Well, not at this time. But even when we move into the new Social Protection Act, that the new Social Protection Act is based on the report that the SPRI report, I don't know how many people have seen that, but the SPRI report has made some recommendations in terms of how we need to address grants moving forward. And that report, for the most part, a lot of those grants that they have highlighted are really geared away from the department, and they're more universalistic grants that is geared towards the Social Security Board.
Oh, so before we move on, I want to encourage folks, if they're out there listening, to please call in. These ladies have such wealth of information and they're ready to answer your questions. 468-2787. Again, that's 468-2787. There's someone here to take your calls, and you can speak directly to any of the four ladies, not me. I'm just the moderator. But you talked about a few grants, the few areas that are not covered. I almost give you an A plus until you talk about what's not covered. Now, this is the land of retaining walls. From the time I know myself, government normally assists persons who have invested $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in a house, and then the landscape or the topography is such in what it is that we require a retaining wall. So I don't know if this is the right place or the right space to ask this question, but if you don't help them with a retaining wall, who would help them? Is there another avenue to get things like those?
So I could help to answer
thank
that
you,
question.
Thank you so much, PS.
We've, from the implementation of the COI recommendations, there were, as Mrs. Malone-Fred, alluded to, there were a number of grants that were in the current system that we had, before, that were adjusted on account of the areas. For example, so as she mentioned, the education grants, those are now going to be managed through the Ministry of Education and Culture. Okay. So grants that would deal with businesses, supports for religious organizations and so forth, those were targeted through the various entities, including businesses, of course, would be the Ministry of Finance, Labor, and the new ministry, Financial Services,
Labor and Trade.
Labor and Trade. So what they've tried to do essentially is pull out those areas that are specific to certain ministries. What I'm aware of as this acting permanent secretary is that each of those entities had the mandate of also to develop policies and procedures that would guide how those grants would be administered. So I know the Ministry of Education has been doing that. I'm certain through the communication team they would be aware of the various policies that have actually been developed already and actually sought consultation from the public. So this is information that is already out there. I'm aware the Ministry of Communication and Works has also been looking at a grant. They're developing their grant system that would guide how those sort of matters that you mentioned, construction elements and so forth, that really are affecting an entire community.
Yes.
As you say, if you're drawing reference to a wall holding up a road, that's an entity that would really need that assistance. So they've actually been developing their own policy guidelines and criteria for how those things would be managed. So I suppose once you have another opportunity to discuss it with the other relevant ministries, you can expound on it a bit more with them.
Thank you for that very clear line there. I hope that these ministries will piggyback off of some of the things that you and your ministry are doing, because it seems to be seamless. You all are answering those questions very well. I want to remind the public again to please call us at 468-2787. That's 468-2787. You can hear us live on ZBVI. You can hear us on CBN Radio. We're live here on the government's official Facebook page. Also, we've now increased our audience now to be captured on CCTV Live and Flow TV Live. So we're everywhere. So ladies, I expect everybody to say that they saw you at some point. So we have this fancy paper now, and it kind of talks to us about the process that's going through. So I think it's going to be on the screen in a little bit. And I would like someone to kind of basically talk me through what we're seeing on the screen right now. And remember that there are a lot of people on the radio listening live that they need that visual context as well.
So one of the things that we were able, with our new system, it has created a dashboard. And basically the dashboard is a presentation of, it analyzes all applications as they come in to the department. So our first slide that we are able to see is indicating to us an overview of the applications that we captured from February 2023 to December 2023. So you see there that overall we had over 500 intakes during that year. And out of that 536 intakes, we did a total of 411 assessment forms. Then you see that they're also showing us that out of that, we had 377 of those applications which were totally completed. And we talk about those that were pending, and basically pending at the end of the year to be put forward to the following year. You can also see from the intakes that most of our intakes were conducted during the month of May, correct? We had most of our, also intakes in the month of May. And one of the things that I really like about this, as it presents our applications right in front of your face, we see which application that persons have completed mostly, which would be our basics need grants. So that's basically they needed a financial grant for a period of time or a food grant. So that's what we refer to as our basic needs grant.
Okay.
And second, you would have seen that we, our second grant would be rent or utilities. And those were the applications that we collected. And that was like 12%. So now we have it broken down a bit more for us in terms of the applications or the applicants. So we see that 59% of the applications I mentioned, that was from our female population. And then we had 41%, which was male, and our average age of our applicants are the age of 58. We also note that in terms of past support, we note something that is also to be highlighted, that some of these persons may have come into the system before, so now they came back seeking further assistance. And that is a total of 53% of those applicants. Anything else, Ms. Freeman, you want to highlight also that one? Okay. As it relates to income, what we are noticing here in this slide is that we have an idea of the income of each applicant. So the majority of our applicants, they would have been retired, so they were at pension age, and you see that they were receiving their income through that. Then we had our second highest would have been persons working full-time. That's 22%. And then we have a category that we refer to as vulnerability category. And this basically gives us even a better idea of the persons that are coming through our system. And you will notice there that is very high as it relates to hypertension. The persons who would have mentioned that they had a chronic illness, hypertension was the highest recorded. And then diabetes would have been second.
Okay. Well, one of the things that kind of surprised me, and let us we could take down the screen so we can see the wonderful guest face. One of the things that surprised me is the ratio of men to women I thought it would have been a lot less male out there. What does that say about our community, Mrs. Malone Fred? Because I never expected to see it's not so far away. And so it shows that we have an active group of residents here that are in full need because you generally won't see males requesting assistance. And I assume that the services warranted for them would be a little different. Speak to me about how the person's male versus female and how you help them versus the needs that they would have.
Okay, so I will begin and hopefully my colleagues will chip in. So I think what happened is from the 2017 hurricanes and the COVID pandemic of 2020, what we saw basically is that a lot of persons have not managed to stabilize themselves on even footing. And then that is also coupled with the fact that when you go into the slow seasons, then you have persons who work these seasonal jobs who now become unemployed as a result of that. And as because they don't have the monies coming in, then they necessarily will seek out the services of social development. I think in looking at the SPRI report, what the SPRI report is basically making recommendation for is an unemployment grant that needs to be channeled through Social Security Board. And that unemployment grant is targeted specifically to persons within the hospitality industry. So in the event if you have another COVID or you have another hurricane, God forbid,
Yes.
then these persons would have paid into that system and is still eligible to receive monies from the monies that they would have paid in. So it would be similar to how we're paying Social Security now.
Understood.
The employers are responsible for a portion, and the employees will be responsible
But that makes a lot
for
of
another
sense.
portion.
I have so many questions, and I see like I have 11 minutes more. But I wanted to ask two more questions in terms of getting back a little bit. Now, you talked about if somebody did not have a social security, use their passports. Before I ask the question, we have a question coming in. I think they're not able to send questions. Somehow they're not getting questions sent through the live, but they're asking a question. I think you answered it in terms of persons who are non-belongers, persons who are undocumented. How are they treated? And that's actually the kind of question I was going to ask. If there's no social security, no this, no that, how is that working? So thank you for that question. That was a good question. How do you treat those persons that are completely undocumented? Beautiful question.
Correct. So I believe as a territory, we take our social responsibility very seriously. And in saying that, what we've done is we form a partnership with the BVI Red Cross Association. So there's a current MOU that is in place, and part of that MOU specifically look at persons who are undocumented and are afraid to come through your regular channels. So that person can be referred out to Red Cross, and then Red Cross will provide whatever requisite services they can provide to that person until the person gets an opportunity to leave the territory.
But if they're undocumented, I don't know if they're going to leave, but okay. So, if I understand you correctly, that means that you, social development, will have a relationship with the Red Cross, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. So Red Cross, kudos to you. My question now is this: is that an encouragement for undocumented persons now to look at to remain in the country because they're getting such wonderful treatment, because they're getting food, rent, this, that, the other? What do you say to persons who would say, well, I'm not sure that that's something I would want as someone from the Virgin Islands who pay taxes, Social Security, that we're now having undocumented persons that we're actually assisting in a social way? That's a tough question. I'm sorry, but I had to ask.
It's a fair question because I'm certain it has arisen in the minds of other persons.
Yeah.
But as I said before, the issue really is not to keep them on long-term assistance.
Okay.
So once they're referred to Red Cross, then of course, Red Cross has a very wide reach in terms of Red Cross International, da da
Okay.
da. And the issue really is to, because you don't necessarily, but if you have to get immigration involved, you have to do what you have to do. Because the issue comes down to one, whether or not the government of the Virgin Islands has the fiscal space, and how socially responsible does it look for us to encourage that type of behavior. So there's an immediacy that, in terms of need, that we need to fill, and we do that by joining forces with the BVI Red Cross in order to do that, because they're undocumented. We can't, through our legal services, provide any level of assistance. But
Oh,
it is
okay.
intended for that assistance, even on the part of Red Cross, to be a very short term.
So the point that you're saying is short term. So this caller, these people are not calling this number. Y'all, my number is not attached to this. They're texting me. Let me just say the number again, 468-2787. But those who have my number, it's okay. This person is saying, well, okay, if the Red Cross will deal with these people that are undocumented, and we certainly have persons here that are here for 10 and 15 years that we know, this is a question, this is not Kyria, undocumented. How now do you deal with the Red Cross, since you have a partnership with Red Cross? Or are we still saying, hey, we know that this person is here for 10 or 15 years? I think you did mention that at some point we might have to call immigration, but 10 or 15 years, I didn't even know that we had persons here undocumented for that long. But
I would hope not.
well, this is why he's saying hey. So,
I would hope not.
so caller, I mean, question, I think that they're saying, you know what? Answer that in your way. Tell me, we do not know that there are people that are here for 10 to 15 years. P.S. That's a policy question. Tell me.
Well, and again, as I'm saying, in my mind, that raises a red flag in some respects. We don't work in the Ministry of Immigration, but I'm certain that they do have the labor officers that are on patrol, and they do their stops checks. At the end of the day, the matter of having undocumented immigrants in a country is something that every country faces.
Right. Right.
I don't suspect that it's something that we have much control over. If things are supposedly greener in these pastures, people are going to want to come.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to make sure that we can move past the undocumented stage to the documented stage. And I suspect that's where there might very well be some gaps. I don't know that it's for that long a period.
Right.
And again, I don't work in the Ministry of
Understood.
Immigration and Labor, so
Understood.
can't really speak
Ministry
to
of
that.
Labor, come on, Tabletalk. Yes. So we're going to go back to the forms that you said. You don't have to put it up, but just in terms of the accountability, I am floored. Now, a lot of people don't like that there's a COI in the BVI, but I think from this point of view, you're seeing accountability that was not required before. So what do you say to those persons who are listening and watching and saying, well, I'm not sure that I like that this COI is here, because it makes things so more rigid that they would say, but based on what I see here, it's definitely more accountable. So my question to you is this: was the transition worth it for the department? The extra work, the extra stress, the extra documentation, the extra timeline. But we see this. So as the head of the department, how do you consider that transition to be? I know, I suspect when it came on early on, you were probably stressed, one of those people with hypertension that you needed a grant. But now that we see this, the end result, what do you say about that as the head and your staff who's here just being really great? What does that say?
Well, Craig, I think first and foremost, I have to thank the staff of social development. They have gone above and beyond the call of duty in order to ensure that they can render services to persons. If you ask me, I think it was in December when we were doing the budget, I said to FS, do me a favor and remove social assistance grants from social development. And a lot of that is primarily because people don't understand. They don't understand that, we are governed by a piece of legislation.
Yeah.
And that piece of legislation has limitations on it. And if you want me to throw open the barn doors, then that piece of legislation needs to reflect where the territory wants to go in terms of persons accessing social assistance. I believe that all of the plans that are in place, it makes very well for a good social service system or social assistance program because it moves us now, we've moved now from the manual system into a digital system. And not only that, I mean, with the help of WFP, which is World Food Program, and UNICEF, they have been with us since 2017, and they continue to hold our hands in terms of the new direction where we need to go. Because if you look at how grants are going, how it's proposed for grants to be orchestrated moving forward, so it's going to be determined by either your living wage or the MEB. Government has to make that decision in terms of what their fiscal space is to accommodate,
MEB?
which is the minimum expenditure basket.
Okay.
So the minimum expenditure basket basically stipulates a figure that persons need in order to live decent by in the
Okay.
territory.
Okay.
And for us, it would be fine because we don't have the poverty analysis has not been completed. So that MEB basically says if somebody comes into us and they fall below that figure, they're automatically eligible for services, right?
And the new legislation speaks to this.
It,
Or
that's
that's
where we're
part
going.
of
That's where we
irregardless
want
of
to-
status, because my phone's still blowing up.
Yes.
Irregardless of
Yes,
status.
Yes, yes.
Because the status
You
thing
will have to
will-
answer a lot
the
of questions with
status-
that, but okay.
The status thing will be addressed
Yeah.
moving forward.
Okay.
And I think we probably will address it as
In the
in
amendments
the
to the-
amendments to the
to the
current
act,
legislation.
as well as the
Yeah.
regulations, yes.
So one person just texted, and I know that we put the statistics on the screen, but they wanted to know if these statistics are available, and if so, where they could find them.
They're not as yet available because those would form part of our annual report for 2023.
Okay.
And once that annual report goes to the House, then it becomes a public document.
So don't screenshot. I don't screenshot the people them page, but okay, I appreciate that. I know we don't have any more time apparently, so time is gone. They're telling me wrap up. So I have to go to the bosses. So I'm gonna ask the PS and straight down. Let me start from down straight up to give me your last words in 1 minute each of this experience and really what message you would want to give to the public. And this is a wealth of information, and to just kind of demystify some of the myths that were out there, each of you.
So I would wrap up by just encouraging persons, if you have any further questions, to reach out to the department. I think we mentioned the numbers before and they should be on the screen, but I would call them again. So that's 468-3636 or 468-3650. And just know that the department, we are here to assist. If you have any questions, you feel free to call us. Thank you so much for having us, Ms. Kiria.
That was Miss Altisha Dawson. Thank you very much.
I would just like to thank you for the opportunity. I think we need more time because we have to condense so much into an hour, and
Yeah.
there's so many more things that we would have loved to talk about. But I would like to encourage persons to come into the department if you're having a difficult time with any situation. There are persons that you may know inside of the department. You can call them directly, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions and assist you as best as we can.
Miss Laurel Freeman, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christopher, for having us this morning. I basically want to end by saying that if a person submits an application to the department, you also have a responsibility to follow through with that application. And following through also means that you submit all the requisite documents that are being requested, because when that is done, it assists us greatly in trying to deliberate on your case as soon as we possibly can. If we don't have the documents, we cannot do that. So I ask you to cooperate, and the department is there to provide services, and persons should feel free to either come in or call the department.
That was Miss Annie Malone, Chief Social Development Officer.
All right, and I want to say thank you as well, Mrs. Christopher, for the time. I think from our discussions today, we recognize that the Ministry of Health and the Social Development Department have been working tirelessly to ensure that we can expand our programs and our initiatives to capture and support all the needs of persons in our community, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their nationality. And of course, those changes would require time. It's taken longer than we would like in some respects, but it's in order to ensure that the process is done properly, we need to put the time and effort into that. So there's a lot on the horizon, and we would look forward, of course, to the inputs from individuals within our community. When we ask for engagement, when we ask for feedback on certain documents, please engage with us. Because at the end of the day, when these legislations and these policies are passed, they become the be-all and end-all that we all be guided by. And when, of course, in the process to get to that point, we want to utilize the engagement element of it, and we want to encourage persons to participate. So I know we had a lot to cover today, and we certainly look forward to another opportunity to expand a bit more once that opportunity is given. But thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tasha Bertie, Acting Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Health and Social Development. Now, generally, as you know, this table talk is designed to really speak about recommendations that come out of the COI, and we generally have a tough time trying to get persons who are very relaxed. But I want to say we gave everybody an A+ today. I like to give them A's. You ladies were stupendous and just wonderful, and the hour has gone. But before we officially turn off our mics, I want to say thanks to some special people who are at my right. We never get to thank the production team who is here well before us. Production team from GIS, I very much appreciate you, Miss Lacey, Glenn, and Mr. Stevens, and our IO, Mr. Fitzroy Randall. Lots of people behind the scenes who make this possible. And for those of you who've missed this live hour, you can always go back and look at BVI Government, and you can see this wonderful hour of a wealth of information from these powerhouse ladies that represent the social services here for the government of the Virgin Islands. I am your host, Karia Christopher, here for Table Talk. It's been the quickest hour I've had in government for sure. So thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that this information will be going to the right places, to the right people. And of course, we want to take this opportunity to welcome you back whenever you want to come, because information is wealth. So we want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's watched us. Again, have a wonderful day. Have a good Valentine's Day? If you celebrate Valentine's Day, have a great Valentine's Day. Again, my name is Kira Christopher. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Take care.